Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1168A, and today's date is January 3rd, 2017, and the title of the episode is Central Bankers Are in the Process of Banning Cash, One Country at a Time. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, we can see that the market, it moved up quite a bit today, bounced around, and it looks like it's the little engine that could, I think I can, as it moves up the hill. And it seems at this point they're trying to make it seem like, oh look, the market is trying to get to 20,000 points and it just can't make it. And we know for a fact that the market is completely manipulated. All they really have to do is throw a switch, have the plunge protection team receive a lot more currency from the Fed, and they can push this up easily. But it looks like they're dragging it out, making it look like, ooh, it's having a tough time, it's all natural, and it's going to eventually get there. And we know that Obama is not going to leave the office without hitting 20,000 points. Now, something might happen during this period where everything completely falls apart. Maybe a black swan or something happens, but we can see he's on track to really get this to where he wants, because overall, he wants the world to look at his presidency, his legacy, to say, listen, from 2008, from this economic crisis, I went in, I created all these jobs, which are part-time, and we know that the unemployment and the figures are completely manipulated, and many, many people, they just don't count, they just say they've fallen off, they just given up. And I created, this is Obama saying this incredible economy. Look, I finally got GDP over 3%. I got the stock market to 20,000 points. Now I'm handing this over to Trump, and let's see what he does with it. And you know this is a complete setup. You know that the economy that we're living in right now is one gigantic illusion. It's the same illusion as it was in 2008, where the subprime securities, they were complete garbage. But the government, the SEC, the Moody's, S&P were all telling us that it's fine. It's AAA. This is not garbage. You're a conspiracy theory. Well, that's fake news if you're thinking it's garbage. But we knew that it was garbage. And everything the central bank told us during that time period, where they're not predicting any type of recession in the year the recession started, we knew at that point that the economy was built on fake information, just like now. And when it all comes tumbling down, who's responsible for all of this? Well, of course they're going to say it's Trump. But we know, and this is why we did this, this is why we recorded all of it throughout this time period to show how the economy was deteriorating in hard data, real economic information, to show how bad it really is. So this way they just can't turn around and say, hey, look, see, we had unemployment at 4.6%. No, you didn't, because we've shown over time that it was completely manipulated. GDP, we've been showing over time it's been manipulated. Retail has been contracting. Real estate, the prices are coming down. Traffic is drying up. We know that only 20 cities are used to create this illusion. And hedge funds were receiving free money to build up the illusion. This is why we've been tracking all of this. So no one can fool us once again. And we see Trump out there. He's doing his best to save jobs, to save the country. We already see that he's not taking a salary. He's not building Air Force One. It's too much money. And we see that he's tweeting all over the place that if these corporations move jobs overseas or build factories outside the country like GM and Ford, he's going to create a border tax and make it very difficult for them. And of course, Ford says, okay, we're not going to do this. We see General Motors is saying, no, you're completely wrong. We don't build our cars out in Mexico. We build them right here in the United States. But what is happening right now is he's trying to save manufacturing. Now remember, and this is very important, the central bankers are still in control. I know what he's doing right now, and we can see that he's doing whatever he possibly can to try to save the manufacturing jobs. And it does look good, and he is making an effort to do this. But we still have to realize we have all this debt, the central bankers are still in control, and there's a lot of manufacturing jobs throughout many of the years, millions of them, that have been shipped overseas. And to get all of these back is going to take quite a while. Do we have that time? I don't know. Because from the economic data that we've been looking at, it doesn't look that way. We see that U.S. manufacturing surveys, they are out there, and the ISM and the PMI, well, they're showing that manufacturing's improving. But when we look at the hard data, like industrial production, it is heading in the opposite direction. It is declining. And what we're seeing right now is that inventory is building up. We might be heading towards stagflation as new orders are declining and input price inflation accelerates. And we're starting to see that the hard data and the fake information, they're heading in two opposite directions. We're seeing around the country that the pension system is in trouble. I mean, especially in Dallas. The director of the Texas Public Policy Foundation, James Quintero, well, he noted that many of the nation's largest pensions are relying on fuzzy math to make them work, or give the appearance that they are working. And we see out in Texas that there's a huge problem. It is a ticking time bomb. And this is not the only location. And when this system goes, all of this is going to go. And this is the main problem here. Because all of this has been built on a gigantic illusion. Remember, when the system came off the gold standard, that was the beginning of the fiat system in 1971. 45 years later or so, plus, we're at the end part of the system. So in the beginning, all these municipalities, the pensions, and all this stuff, well, there wasn't all this debt. They didn't have to use fuzzy mathematical equations. Only when you're at the end stages do you have to create Ponzi schemes, use manipulated calculations to create the illusion that everything is fine. But all of this eventually falls apart, and that's where we're at right now. We see out in Germany, inflation, well, that is hitting right now. And we see the inflation out there has risen by 1.7% on the year. And this has to do with rising energy, food prices, and we're going to see inflation hit not just out in Europe, but it's all going to flood back here to the U.S. because as the petrodollar is basically dead in the water, all those dollars are going to flood back to the United States, and it's going to be a complete disaster. We see that Greece, well, they have unleashed a soft cash ban. Now, we're noticing that the central bank is going from country to country where they're banning cash. And Greece right now, they're creating and unveiling this so-called soft approach by which taxpayers will only be granted tax allowances or deductions when payments are made via credit or debit cards. And the new guidelines, well, they refer to employees, pensioners, farmers, and the unemployed. And what we're seeing right now is that they're using this gauge of where they'll determine the amount of taxpayers and what they'll have to pay with electronic money. So in order to be able to get the tax allowance, those individuals who make an income of 10,000 euros, 10% of their expenses will have to be made through an electronic medium. If you're making between 10,001 euros to 30,000 euros, 15% would have to be paid using electronic money, let's say, or electronic currency. If you're making over 30,000 euros, it's 20%. So we see right now they are pushing for a cashless society. And we also see this in India, where they've gotten rid of the 500 and the 1,000 rupee, where they're trying to create this cashless environment. And of course, they're saying this is because of money laundering, drugs. But this has nothing to do with all of that. This is about stopping the bank runs when the system collapses. And we can see that they're pushing their agenda forward with all of this. And they actually switched their cash transactions from 1,500 euros, which was previous to 12/31/2016, and now it's down to 500 euros. In simple words, any purchase of goods and services over 500 euros will need to be done via plastic money. We see in Greece that austerity has really taken its toll on the Greek hospital system. And what we're seeing is that all this austerity, well, it has not helped, because 7 years later, the situation has gone from bad now to worse. The austerity freezing of hiring ended up in severe shortages in the medical and paramedical personnel. The sharp expenditure cuts deprive hospitals of spare parts and essential material. Doctors and personnel say the hospitals have become a danger zone. And this is all because of austerity. It is not helping. And of course, the corporate media, the central bankers, they're out there trying to tell you that everything is improving. Actually, it really isn't. It's getting worse and worse as time goes on. Yes, they can manipulate the unemployment to show you that the numbers are coming down, but what the people are actually feeling and what's actually happening is completely the opposite of what the central bankers, what the corporate media is trying to tell you. Things are rapidly deteriorating in these countries. Now, out in Finland, over a year ago, they were going to become the first nation to hand out what's called helicopter money, where the central bank goes out and they say, here's some money for you, or I should say currency for you, here's some currency for you, here's some currency for you. Please go out and spend it in the economy. Well, as of January 1st of 2017, the experiment in basic income, universal basic income, well, it's officially begun. Finland is becoming the first country in Europe to pay its unemployed citizens the guaranteed monthly sum of 560 euros. That's $587. And this is an experiment created by the central bankers. And what they're doing is, if you're unemployed, if you have a job, you'll be receiving funds. Now they're going to start off small with a select few of people, and they're going to give them the 560 euros. Now, the average private sector income in Finland is about 3,500 euros per month. And what they're hoping is that these individuals will be able to take this and spend this in the economy. Because even if they get a job and they're receiving this currency, they will still be able to receive the currency. And they're hoping by doing this, they'll be able to take it and use it in the economy. Remember, the central bankers, they have a problem with people spending their currency in retail. This is what they want people to do to keep the economies moving along. And here in the United States, this is one of the biggest problems. They tried to lower the interest rates, just like in Europe, down to negative regions. Here in the U.S., it's very close to zero. And people are saying, something, I don't make enough to purchase goods right now. I rather save my money because I've seen what has happened. I've seen what happens when you lose a job. I've seen what happened when I don't have money. So right now, I'm going to hold on to my currency because I know I'm going to need it later. Now, out in Finland, their unemployment is at 8.1%. Most likely it's much higher, but let's go with the 8.1%. Now, as this continually moves up and up and up, just like every other country throughout Europe, these people can't find work. Here in the United States, our unemployment rate is not 4.6%. That's manipulated. If you look at John Williams' Statostats, we're closer to 23, 24% right now. And most likely it's much higher than that. So it looks like what they're doing is they're getting people used to receiving this small amount of funds and keeping them controlled. If you want to receive this, you'll do what we say. You'll receive this small amount of funds and you will accept the low-paying jobs. So why would they do this? Because many of the people were very worried about going to get this low-paying job because what they were receiving from the government, like welfare or whatever they were receiving, was a little bit more than the low-paying jobs. Now they're forcing people, by giving them an extra 560 euros, to accept these low-paying jobs. It seems like they're trying to create this third world type of society by saying you will accept these low-paying jobs and here's the subsidies for accepting this work, because there's going to be no high-paying jobs at all. And we know this is what the TTIP, the TPP was all about. So what are we seeing right now? Well, they understand what is coming. They understand that as this entire system collapses, they're not going to be high-paying jobs. We see out in the EU, Slovakian Prime Minister Robert Fico, well, he is pleading with the remaining 27 nations to cease giving citizens the power to decide their own future. He is saying it is enough with the referendums. So really what he's saying is that the people shouldn't have a say. Because if this continues, he says, the EU is going to collapse. Well, isn't this the choice of the people? If the people don't want the EU anymore, guess what? They don't want it. It will collapse. But we can see those non-elected leaders, those individuals, they don't want the people to decide this. They want to tell the people what should be done. We see right now, before the actual implementation of Article 50, we see the UK ambassador to the EU, well, he has resigned. Sir Ivan Rogers, Britain's top diplomat in Brussels, has abruptly resigned from the office just months before the Brexit negotiations. And we can see that Sir Ivan, well, he's going to appoint a successor, but he is very experienced in dealing with the EU. Now, we know that come March, they're going to try to invoke Article 50. And it seems like those individuals in the EU are jumping ship right now. And the people of Britain are saying, listen, if the government, the powers that be, don't deliver by March 31st, as originally promised, there could be a civil war throughout the UK, where the people say, you didn't do what you said, and the people will get pissed, they'll protest, the government will come down on them, and it might spark a civil war. Now remember, the central bankers actually would like this, because they don't want countries leaving their system. So we need to watch this very carefully, because we could see we are headed into a very difficult time period, this first part of 2017. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.